Most people read the Beatitudes like a spiritual self-improvement plan. Be more humble, be more patient, be more pure. Almost like Jesus is handing out 8 steps to becoming a better version of yourself. But what if that's not what Jesus is doing at all? What if the Beatitudes are not a list of how to change your life, but a picture of what a changed life looks like? That changes everything. Because if the Beatitudes are instructions, they will crush you. But if they are descriptions, they will invite you. They're not demands to achieve, but marks of grace received. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Let's be honest. This doesn't sound like a strategy for success. This sounds like weakness, like loss, like surrender. And that's exactly the point. Jesus is not describing people who are trying hard to impress God. He's describing people who have already realized they can't. The poor in spirit are those who know they have nothing to offer. Those who mourn are not just sad about life. They grieve their sin. The meek are not passive. They have surrendered their need to control. In other words, these are not people climbing their way up to God. These are people who have come to the end of themselves and found that God meets them there. The Beatitudes begin where we usually don't. We tend to think the blessed life begins with strength. Jesus says it begins with poverty of spirit. We think it begins with confidence. Jesus says it begins with mourning. We think it begins with having it all together. Jesus says it begins with knowing you don't. That's why the Beatitudes are not a ladder to climb. They are a doorway you walk through. And the doorway is low. No one enters the kingdom of God standing tall. You enter bowed low, aware of your need, desperate for grace. And here's the turning point. The Beatitudes are not traits we manufacture. They are qualities that grace produces. When a person encounters Jesus, really encounters Him, something changes. Not perfectly, not instantly in every way, but directionally, deeply, undeniably. A heart that once was proud becomes humble. A heart that once ignored sin begins to grieve it. A heart that once chased the world begins to hunger for righteousness. Why? Because grace doesn't just forgive you, it reshapes you. The only way this life is possible is through Jesus. Because Jesus is the true Blessed One. He became poor in spirit, leaving the riches of heaven. He mourned, bearing the weight of our sin. He was meek, submitting even to death on a cross. He hungered and thirsted for righteousness and fulfilled it perfectly. And then He gives His righteousness to us. So now, by faith in Him, we are not trying to become blessed. We are blessed. And from that place of grace, a new kind of life begins to grow. So, what do we do with this? Don't read the Beatitudes and think, I need to try harder to be this kind of person. Instead, ask, has my life been changed by Jesus? Because the Beatitudes are not about behavior modification. They're about heart transformation. They are not a to-do list. They are a mirror. They show us what grace looks like when it takes root in a life. A final encouragement. If you read the Beatitudes and feel like you fall short, you're actually closer than you think. Because the first step into this life is not strength, it's need. And the good news of the gospel is this: Jesus doesn't bless the people who have it all together. He blesses the ones who know they don't, and come to Him anyway.